Hello everyone, welcome back to Ripe Stories. I believe that purchasing a deserted property on a Caribbean island at an incredibly low price would be the opportunity of my dreams. However, within just a few days, a dishonest government worker was extorting me for payments, shutting off my utilities, and making threats to tear down my property. What this person failed to realize was that I wouldn't surrender easily. This is the account of what transpired. Let's jump straight into this tale. The featured story begins in this manner. For the initial 24 years of my existence, I resided in New York. To express it plainly, that environment wasn't suitable for me. The noise never ceased, my job felt monotonously repetitive and overly exposed to the public, and I had simply disappeared among the masses. This wasn't due to lack of achievement. I had earned a decent income during my final 5 years of employment there. However, my spirit couldn't tolerate the urban atmosphere, so I needed to create a transformation for myself. My initial approach was simply relocating from the city to a neighboring state. I dedicated weeks to investigating properties and contacting residents. Although I encountered pleasant individuals, I still couldn't discover anything that resonated with me. When I did find something appealing, the cost was so extraordinarily expensive that pursuing it further would have been disheartening. However, after additional investigation, I discovered an even superior concept. For some background context, my parents had migrated from the Caribbean just before my birth, abandoning what they described as a fulfilling existence. There had always been this peculiar burden placed upon me that I would never experience the people from their past lives. They continued to visit occasionally, particularly since I've reached an age where I can manage independently and they don't need to remain behind. But I had never seriously considered traveling there until this moment. By the way, everyone, I apologize if my voice still sounds somewhat under the weather. I believe this cold is nearly finished, but we'll see. Given that this was among the superior options available to me, I conducted some investigation. For some unexplained reason, I felt particularly attracted to the Dominican Republic. Something about the photographs I viewed resonated with me in ways that other islands couldn't. Before long, I discovered this property that appeared to be deserted. I had to verify this multiple times because it appeared to be in excellent condition from what I could observe. The structure was 2 levels, surrounded by vegetation, and it was essentially an isolated plot that accompanied it. Due to its abandoned condition and secluded location, the price was so affordable that I couldn't resist it. I invested several additional weeks working out the specifics, but quite rapidly I was traveling to my new residence. The initial few days were wonderful. I had relocated rather quickly and had opportunity to simply unwind before concerning myself with establishing my workspace and where I would now be conducting remote work. I'm extremely thankful that my employer was able to retain me despite being in a different country. I understand that's quite uncommon. But regardless, after getting settled and discovering a bit about the nearby town, I was prepared to begin my new existence. That's when I first encountered Karen. She's a middle-aged resident who presented herself as an official government employee, which was accurate. The island where I was residing fell under the authority of a small local administration, and Karen was the person controlling all the operations. How do I know this? Well, that's the first thing she informed me when she appeared at my door approximately 1 week after moving in. After revealing her status to me, she required a processing payment to leave me in peace. I was clearly very bewildered since I had settled all the charges very early to ensure I was managing my budget properly. Something remained very suspicious here though. I informed her that I was certain I didn't need to pay anything additional, and asked if she could provide me with more details. But she rolled her eyes and stated that I understood what she was requesting. After attempting to comprehend what she was asking and confirming she wasn't simply some random woman, I finally understood that she was requesting a bribe. I didn't reveal to her that I had figured this out, but I told her that the property was completely paid for and that she had no authority to demand additional money from me, government employee or otherwise. If she desired, I told her I could forward her all the required documentation to demonstrate it, and regardless of anything else, this was my property. She didn't utter another word, but her gaze cut straight through my essence. She handed me her business card containing her name and contact information, then turned around and departed. Now I was comfortable being alone, but she was genuinely unsettling and I felt somewhat uneasy remaining in the house for the remainder of that day. I naturally conducted research to determine if she was being truthful, and she was partially correct. I was accurate about her deceiving me regarding the processing charge, but she wasn't deceiving me about the authority she possessed over the island. From what some of the other individuals were discussing online, she was recognized for not providing people opportunities and attempting to extract every cent so they would be left undisturbed, as she wasn't opposed to pursuing legal action. And incidentally, Ripe Stars, one detail I neglected to mention initially, I had to censor some details because the original poster was somewhat revealing his identity, and I don't really want to expose too much personal information of individuals here. However, he was explaining that he didn't remain on the Dominican Republic main island, so to speak, but he was staying on one of the smaller islands that encircle the Dominican Republic. So indeed, she was clearly corrupt and accustomed to having her way, so I was an unexpected challenge for her. Understanding her character now though, I knew this wouldn't be the conclusion. I discovered this the following morning when my shower lacked any water. Actually, none of my water was functioning. I attempted to see if there was a leak somewhere, or if there was something serious occurring in the news, but I couldn't locate anything. Suspecting that Karen was involved with it, I contacted her and inquired what was happening. She informed me immediately that I had forgotten to pay some type of water charge, and so she had disconnected me from the island's shared water system. Every word was saturated with mocking energy, and she stated that all I needed to do was pay my charges and I would be fine. I was clearly very angry and I understood that I had to take action about it. I remained on the call and spoke to her about how what she was doing was extremely illegal, and that I knew what her scheme was. If she really wanted to extort that severely, she should have attempted it with someone else because I wasn't going to provide it to her. Karen informed me very directly that I clearly didn't understand how things functioned in this country. She continued about how her service was very significant to the community, and she didn't consider me as a safe individual anyway since I was from the US. So she was going to ensure that she obtained what she desired before I did. She then stated she's prepared to activate the water when I am and then disconnected. I couldn't bathe, I couldn't drink, I couldn't even cleanse my face. This was pure abuse of authority and I wasn't going to simply sit back and accept it. I conducted some investigation on the governing structure here and discovered that while Karen was at the peak of this island, she wasn't the leader of the Dominican Republic's government. Clearly, I documented everything she did and brought all my documentation to the mainland. As soon as I arrived there, I submitted a complaint with the regional government office, which was directly above Karen. It was a fairly simple process and I had a strange intuition that it was far too easy to resolve the situation. Well, it wasn't. Apparently that complaint reached Karen's attention very rapidly, and the following day there was a document attached to my door. It declared that my house, because of it being deserted for so long, was uninhabitable and was being submitted to be demolished. It stated that I had 30 days to leave the house or additional charges would be imposed. It was signed by Karen. I was completely stunned. Not only was this essentially a threat that she was going to destroy my house, but it was an attempt to get around the people she worked for to get me to remain quiet. Well, I wouldn't be silenced though. I didn't care how extensive this became. It was my house that I worked so diligently to locate and make my own. And almost instantly some heartless individual was attempting to take it away from me. I returned to the mainland again. And this time though, I remained. I obtained a hotel and finally got to clean myself up. I got to work and employed a lawyer who specialized in corruption cases. And when we first met, he thanked me for already having so much evidence against her, especially since Karen didn't even really attempt to conceal what she was doing. For days we both investigated everything we could about her, even returning to the island to get the response of some of my neighbors and their experiences with Karen. None of them were as severe as mine, but some of them had actually been defrauded by her before, and just didn't know what to do. The lawyer had a wonderful time with all of it, and suggested that we go directly to the regional government, as well as whatever media would listen to us. The meeting was like an elementary school presentation of Identify the Villain. My lawyer explained all the laws that contradicted her actions, such as bribery and abuse of power, which under law number 44806 are criminal violations. If anyone is interested, we displayed videos and pictures of my disconnected water supply. The notice on my door, which now appeared so fraudulent I couldn't even believe I initially considered accepting it, as well as all of the documentation that proved I didn't owe anything to anyone. The entire time I was concerned that Karen was going to burst in at any moment and begin yelling at me. But fortunately she was completely unaware. The meeting was soon finished and we were thanked for bringing this all to attention. They stated that Karen would be suspended so she could be thoroughly investigated, and it was music to my ears. All of the government employees who listened appeared so embarrassed to see someone who had just arrived to their country be treated this way. I didn't want this to be my first impression, but when I told my lawyer that, he just laughed and said that everyone will be just happy that I did something about Karen. Sometime later, my water was restored. It was extremely refreshing to know that people worked quickly here when there was a complaint. I received a few knocks on my door that day, but I didn't dare to answer it. I had a good sense of who it was and I wasn't foolish enough to attempt anything. Almost immediately, she was dismissed from her position as I learned from a letter. It was also an apology from one of the officers that worked on my case, stating that I was still welcome in this country, and that there would be no more incidents like this. Just to make it complete, they provided me all the codes and documentation of her abuse and what she was being found guilty of, which was corruption and abuse of her power. It was the good life after that. It's only been a few months since this occurred, but it really feels like such a long time ago. I've made friends across the island and really don't have a negative view of this place at all anymore. It is my home and Karen cannot take that away, if she's ever really known what that feels like. I doubt anyone's wanted to have a home with her anyway. And indeed everyone. The next one is an extremely satisfying, petty revenge story that you don't want to miss. And by the way, if you've watched until here, please don't forget to like the video, because that would help me tremendously. So this was a really brief and sweet immediate petty revenge moment. I was savoring a cup of coffee on my rear porch. We reside on the 10th hole green on a golf course. It is situated in nature, surrounded by trees and filled with deer and turkeys and all sorts of other creatures like that. It is a very preserved Tahoe blue type of place in the Sierra foothills. So this entitled jerk of a man in his 70s drives to the green on his golf cart and proceeds to leap out of the cart with a burning cigarette in his mouth that he simply tosses on the ground still lit before placing his ball. I was courteous enough to wait for his shot, but then he walked back to the cart. I asked him if he was going to retrieve his cigarette. He rolled his elderly man eyes at me, and I looked at his friends and said, "Seriously? You're going to allow this guy throw his disgusting cigarette, but it's not his private golf course. They just weakly shrugged their shoulders and they all drove away. I set down my coffee and walked out front to my driveway off to the side out of view. The next tee is directly across the street from my driveway, so as soon as the elderly man placed his ball on the tee and takes his driver back, I immediately yell, "Hey you effing litterbug," at the top of my lungs and completely ruined his shot. The ball literally bounced off his own golf cart and he practically threw his driver. It brought me immense amounts of joy. Thankfully, he had the wisdom not to retaliate and they all drove off down the fairway. And indeed everyone, that's certainly a good method on how to get revenge on an entitled littering jerk. The next one is a story from Argar Malicious Compliance that you don't want to miss. Titled, Boss Accused Me of Bullying So I Requested Punishment. Years ago I worked in a semi-public sector position as part of a successful team helping make life easy for local businesses. Our team supervisor took a good position in the private sector, and a new supervisor was recruited from a respectable organization similar to ours in a different part of the country. She worked compressed hours Monday to Thursday and was off on Fridays, a month or two in, and although the new supervisor was quite specific about things being done her way, and had upset a couple of my colleagues by criticizing their work, I'd had no issues with her. We had a team meeting where the supervisor said that our performance was not good enough. By the way, we were arguably the best in the country, and that she wanted to be more involved in what and how we did everything to ensure better quality. So we should just copy her on every client email so she could comment as needed before we sent another reply. Although this seemed inefficient, nobody argued and I simply asked her if I should wait until Monday for her to comment on any client emails received on a Friday. I cannot recall exactly what she said, but at the end of the meeting she asked me to stay behind and then told me in a heated tone that my question was bullying behavior, that it was unprofessional to ask the question in front of the team, and said that my actions were the sort of thing that HR would see as grounds for dismissal, and that I should be very careful in the future. I told her I understood and we returned to our desks, where I wrote up every single detail of the entire meeting and interaction, and sent it to the head of HR with the explanation that as bullying was very serious and may not be reported by the victim. I felt duty-bound to report myself. I also laid it on pretty thick about being appalled by my unprofessional behavior, and the fact that my career was likely at risk, and I clearly had a desperate need for training and discipline to fix my dangerous ways. I also copied in my union representative, and within a day me, my union rep, and my supervisor were with the head of HR who, being a by-the-book professional, could find no indication of bullying or justification for my fears of being an unprofessional bully in need of free education. I was asked to leave the meeting. My union representative stayed in and I don't know what was said, but within 6 weeks my supervisor was gone, and that same week, my weak and effective but likable big supervisor called me in to thank me as he had wanted to get rid of her, but had not known how. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. When I had my beautiful baby girl, I was basically confined to the house for the following 7 weeks. A long C-section recovery had me desperate to get out of the house. I decided to go for a walk in a nearby park with my baby. I could not find a very comfortable way to keep her on me without the weight hurting my incision. So I chose to just push her in an infant stroller. My husband was at work anyway and it was a beautiful looking day outside. If I knew what I do now, I might have waited an extra day or two before venturing out. Now Karen was not a stranger and she was known around the neighborhood. This person was big into those pyramid schemes. And when she would come around asking people to join, she seemed personally offended when we would tell her no. Like she was so entitled she expected us to just hand over money because she said so. Her doing something petty would not be a far reach by any means. Sadly, she was at the park that day and felt the need to approach me. "Karen, do you need to be here disturbing everybody trying to enjoy the weather?" I had zero clue what she was talking about and just looked at her with that WTF face. I had no idea what I was possibly doing that could be offensive to her or anybody else though. "Karine, you came out here with that baby making noises and ruining the environment?" "Me, but she has not cried once since we got here." "Karen, well she is making sounds still and you're just as bad with your noises." Me quietly singing to her. She expected the park to be silent for her. I was not singing loudly by any means. Just a quiet little lullaby that nobody would hear unless they were right next to me. Karen could have moved slightly and it would be quiet. She just wanted to cause problems though. I don't deal with these types of people and their crap and choose to just ignore them. That changed when Karen decided to fix the problem on her own and demanded to hold my baby to shut her up. I was very protective and nobody but me and my husband were holding the baby yet. If I was not letting close friends or family hold her, there was no way Karen was getting her dirty hands on my daughter. I did not think to hold the stroller tighter, but I wish I had because the next thing I knew, she had pushed me aside and started to run down the path with my baby. I sprinted after her as fast as I could while screaming for help. "Me, stop her! She just stole my baby! Please somebody stop her." I'm lucky that the people here are friendly and got involved. Others were now chasing after her too and much faster than I was. One guy on a bike heard my screaming and just took off to cut Karen off and slow her down. It was enough for me to catch up, and when I did, I was not gentle at all. I full-on tackled her to the ground. Karen meanwhile is screaming now. "Karen, help! Assault! This baby is in danger with her violent mother." Everybody saw what she had done though and nobody was going to be on her side. The police came because somebody had called them for the kidnapping. Karen turned the entire thing around to me assaulting her, and wanting charges pressed against me for tackling her to the ground unprovoked. I was in pain and just wanted to go home where it was safe. Meanwhile, my baby had woken up and was crying, and I just wanted to feed her and relax. After a lot of talking and arguing, I was allowed to go home, but Karen did move forward with her assault charges against me, so she ended up suing me. I don't know how she got a lawyer to take that case, but my guess was that he did not know the entire truth of the situation. I got a lawyer as well who, after hearing everything, told me that if I told the truth, I should not end up getting into too much trouble. We went to court and Karen started talking about how she was just walking through the park when she noticed me being crazy, that I was putting the baby in serious danger, and she needed to take her away for protection. Then I supposedly attacked her out of nowhere, but I had several witnesses at the park stating that Karen was the one who started the entire thing, and the only yelling I did was to alert people that my baby was stolen and get help. One guy even had video on his phone of part of the incident, which the other lawyer tried to get thrown out as being only a partial telling of the story. I got asked point blank if I tackled Karen to the ground. I told the judge that yes, I did it in order to get my baby back, having the same story as the witnesses while Karen had nobody on her side. Meanwhile, her lawyer was trying to pull some miracle by saying it should not matter why I assaulted Karen, just that I did it. The judge said that he would not find somebody guilty of assault in a case of a mom trying to keep their children safe. That it was defense and every mom would have that type of reaction. As for me being a danger to the baby, Karen was trying to claim that I had postpartum depression, which has a small percentage of women trying to harm their child. I did not have postpartum depression though, and I had doctor's testimony to back that up. I was going for my wellness checks, and that is something they keep an eye out for nowadays. What gets really interesting is that my lawyer managed to dig up that Karen was the one with a history of mental illness. I cannot remember what it was called exactly, but it made her an unreliable witness to the events. She was now being seen as the unstable one and had nothing left of an argument to get me thrown in jail. The judge found that I was not guilty of assault and told Karen that she was very lucky. She could have faced serious charges of kidnapping, child endangerment, and possibly even child abuse. I felt that having to stay in the neighborhood was a worse punishment for Karen than just being sent to prison on those charges. Everybody knew what she had done, and the small reputation she had was now totally ruined. Nobody wanted to speak to Karen and instead spit on the ground when she would pass by, calling her a baby thief, and just a constant barrage of hate. I personally saw that her car had been vandalized at least twice by people. She was a complete social outcast, and for somebody with the ego and entitlement of Karen, that was worse than prison. With this, there was no end date, and even if she moved, people could look her up and find out exactly what happened. And before we end the video, we will read one last funny, satisfying revenge story from our petty revenge. It is titled, "Kid kept kicking my sandcastle, so I built the next one with a rock." So I was about 11 or 12 at the time and on vacation. We were staying at a lake in Alberta, and it was honestly a good time. I built an amazing sandcastle. It had walls, towers, and even a drawbridge made out of driftwood. Plus I built it on a platform made of rocks halfway into lake like a little island. I mean, come on. I even made decorative trees out of seaweed. And then the teenagers struck. This one kid went and kicked the sandcastle to bits, and even before I got a picture. My next sandcastle, I buried the heaviest, most jagged rock in the base. The teenager went up to it and kicked it again. Well, let's just say the castle lasted longer than his foot. My castle did not get knocked down ever again. And now as a teenager myself, I still vividly remember this event and it makes me laugh. Don't ruin people's work, kids. And indeed everyone, thank you so much for watching.